Well, here we are, taking off for our big trip to northern Kentucky with our grandchildren and their mom and dad. Actually, this wasn't the first leg of our trip. It was where we were taking off from LaGuardia and could see the skyline of New York City, and it was just so phenomenal that I thought I've just got to record it. While we're flying through the air, let me give you a little bit about my thoughts on airlines. My husband and I always fly Delta, and the reason is, A, I don't want to go somewhere where I don't know what seat I'm going to have until I get on the plane. B, I don't want to buy tickets that are going to put me first in line for being booted off the plane. And C, we just have had a consistent positive experience with them as we travel. Now, mind you, there have been occasions, as in on this trip, where we actually got bumped off a flight. But even when getting bumped off the flight, we got good customer service. Now, this is just a little bit of some of what we do to keep us entertained while we're flying, and we're kind of spoiled because we try very hard to pool our resources so that we can fly first class, just so that we can be most comfortable. Another thing that we do is we travel and intentionally set aside time to have at least 2 hours or more of a layover between flights, just in case something happens that makes us late for our next flight. The good thing about this is it gives us an excuse to figure out how to get into the crown room. And so while we wait, even if it's as much as 4 hours, we can do so in comfort, and we can actually enjoy their food and other amenities that are available in the crown room. Another tip is always check in prior to the day of your flight. As soon as you're able to check in, let them know you're coming. That way you don't kind of bump yourself up to the top of the list if they need to make space. They know you're coming, so hopefully you would be less likely to be taken off the flight. This is what greets you when you come into the Northern Kentucky Airport, and I thought it had to do with the Creation Museum, but it's actually related to stuff that has been found in the area. Now, the purpose of our trip was to come to the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter that is owned by Answers in Genesis. We came as a family trip because we really wanted to see what had been done to demonstrate the importance of creation and the importance of God's Word. And I'll have to tell you, they have done a phenomenal job. The gardens leading up to and around the Creation Museum are absolutely phenomenal. So I would highly recommend that in addition to taking the time to go through the interior Creation Museum, that you take some time to go and walk through the outdoor areas. You will be amazed at how beautiful it is. And here's the grandbabies. They do a phenomenal job about laying out the foundation of God's Word. They take you through the history that is contained in Genesis, and the intention of that is to point you through and get you to the point of why the ark. The other thing that's really neat about both the Ark and the Creation Museum is that they have great places for kids to play in and let off steam. We spent 2 days at the Ark Encounter. When you arrive at the parking lot, they have this area where you enter a queue to catch a bus that actually takes you up to where the Ark is located. As crowded as this looks, they only had one side open, and it went through and you move through pretty quickly. As soon as you get on the bus, you're kind of anxious to see whether or not you can see or how soon you'll be able to see the actual ark. And you kind of can see it as you're coming out of the parking lot, but really as you're driving along, you really don't get a good glimpse of it until you get right up on it. So they do a really good job of building that anticipation. Again, you have the opportunity to do a lot of things outside the ark, and actually our grandchildren and their parents did that ropes course, which was such fun and a great way to just mix up the day and what they were doing. And there you have it, the ark. This is built according to the instructions in the Bible as best we can understand them in today's language. The other thing that you'll find is that there's also modern requirements that, I'm sure they didn't have exit signs on the Ark. Some of the things in the Ark, they also talked about it might have looked this way because, we definitely don't know exactly. I love the archway that you walk through under that rainbow, because that rainbow is significant and tells us God's promise that he would never again destroy the earth with water. The Ark Zoo was a wonderful, again, outside distraction. My son-in-law did a great job researching it and knew that there was an exhibit where you can go and walk through the exhibit with the opportunity to see kangaroos. And if the kangaroos were on the path, then you could go and you could touch them. When they were off the path, you couldn't touch them, but when they were on the path, you could touch them and interact with them as much as they would allow you. So there were kangaroos here, and then there was one wombat. It was really quite fun. Our rather unintentional schedule for each day that we were at the Ark was to do frequent check-ins to see what was going on with the kangaroos. We checked there first thing in the morning when we would arrive, and then kind of as a breaking up of the day, we would pop down. We stopped in before we went to lunch. We stopped in after we went to lunch. We stopped in kind of middle of the day. We stopped in before we left for the day, just to have a lot of fun seeing these really, really remarkable animals. They were pretty much unavailable. I think maybe my grandson got to touch one once, but they pretty much stayed out of the way. I've seen footage in other areas where folks had really been able to encounter them, and that's pretty much if you're going to be there during the cooler times of the day. During the heat of the day, they were resting, relaxing in the shade. They'd get in that sand pit and rub around to cool themselves off, and pretty much spent the day lounging and relaxing. It's a great life. We got to meet this wonderful turtle. I think his name was Munch. And similarly, when he was on the concrete, you could interact with him, but if he was on the grass, you needed to leave him alone. One of the things that I learned during this trip that I was unaware of is that if you scratch turtles on their shell, they actually can feel that, and it is actually very comforting and soothing and enjoyable for them. Really reminded me of why it is that people talked about being very careful with turtles and their shells, and really increased my sympathy of thinking about turtles on the highway, especially if they've been hit, how painful that is for them. Here Munch was halfway on and halfway off the concrete, so I asked before I approached. A lot of variety in the animals that were there. I highly recommend that you take the time to go down and explore in that area, especially if you have children. It's just a great distraction, and it's very interesting to see them out and about. Their habitats are not that robust, but they clearly are well cared for and are very comfortable in their settings. I appreciated, too, the staff that worked there. They were available, they answered questions and gave these wonderful presentations that talked about how these animals were created by God and the intentionality behind what he did to design them. There were other activities associated with the animals. One was the petting zoo, which our family loved, and another is a camel ride, which we got there too late to be able to enjoy. I also appreciated how at every presentation in describing the animals, they defined and talked about how God was very intentional in his design, and how it was that he brought two of every kind, male and female, to the ark to repopulate the earth after the flood. I especially appreciate answers in Genesis' explanation of the existence of dinosaurs and how it ties into Genesis and the flood account, in that the earth is not millions of years old. It's actually 6,000 years old, in alignment with God's Word. One of my favorite exhibits was this one on children's depictions of the flood and how Satan used us making cartoon characters of those who participated in the flood, how it softens the severity and the seriousness of what actually happened at that time. During our time in northern Kentucky, we took a brunch cruise on Sunday morning that was a jazz brunch cruise. I don't recommend it. The name of the company is right here. The reason I don't recommend it is because the food wasn't good, the service was terrible, and you couldn't hear the jazz music unless you were downstairs in this dark dining room. So I wouldn't recommend it. We had a great time with our grandchildren. I would offer to send you my grandson's rules on how to play cornhole, but they'll probably change by the time I could type them up and send them to you. Let me just say they were interesting and a lot of fun. On any vacation, I would highly recommend that you build in time to just be still and enjoy the area you are in. You don't have to go all the time every day. Another thing that we did is we checked out a couple of the restaurants that Guy Fieri has reviewed in the Cincinnati area. And while we were waiting for our reservation in Cincinnati, we found this wonderful water park. Had enough time that we were able to let the kids play for a little bit, which was really nice on a hot June afternoon. And then mom and dad, being as smart as they are, had a change of clothes in the car, and they were able to change clothes, and we were able to get to our reservation right on time. It was great. And again, we would not have been able to find this had we not taken the time to just take it easy, enjoy being together as a family, and exploring the area we were visiting. The restaurant we were heading to when we found the splash pad was Bakersfield OTR. I didn't take a lot of pictures, but it's a eclectic taco place, and oh my goodness, highly recommend it. It is delicious. Guy Fieri knew what he was talking about. You can check out the episode on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Taste of Belgium in Crestview is a fancy waffle place that in my opinion is one and done. The food was okay, the service terrible, but my grandchildren loved the waffles. For them, it was kind of like having dessert for dinner. One place that we found that we ate at more than once was a place called Drake's. It was right around the corner from our hotel, so it was super convenient, but the food was fabulous, and it was such a diverse menu that you could get just about anything you want. A good burger, good sushi, a steak, whatever you'd like. And the service was phenomenal. We spent one day at the Newport Aquarium in Newport, Kentucky, and it was fabulous. They were so creative in the variety of ways they allowed you to interact with the inhabitants of the aquarium. The shark bridge, the tunnel that you walked through that made you feel like you were in the middle of the aquarium, the various touching places where you can actually touch the different inhabitants. It was fabulous. A visit to northern Kentucky would not be complete for a horse-crazy person like me without going to the Kentucky Horse Park. It had been probably 20 years since I'd been there, so there was a lot of change and a lot of growth and a lot of development. But what I appreciated most is there was so much more interaction with staff on property. Not that it was bad before, but they've really gotten great at it. It gave us the opportunity to ask questions, find out more about the different horses that live there and their needed care. We also got to pet some barn cats as well. It even got me a little bit inspired to come home and take better care of my barn. It's a great facility and extremely well maintained. Thanks so much for joining us on our little trip up to northern Kentucky. I really do appreciate it. I hope it's helpful, and I hope you know that if you go in that area, we highly recommend that you hang out at the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. Definitely, by all means, check out the horse park. If you've gotten value out of this video, I would sure appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button. And to be notified for future videos, please subscribe to my channel and ring the bell icon. Thanks for being here.